From zero to hero, momentum makers, momentum creators. Let's go. So today we have a guest who probably knows more about traffic jams than your local taxi driver and has analyzed more mobility data than Google Maps on a Monday morning. He is the mastermind behind Vianova, the startup that's turning urban chaos into organized, data-driven efficiency. With over 1 million connected vehicles feeding insights daily, his platform helps cities fight congestion, pollution, and that one guy who always parks terribly. Let's welcome the traffic whisperer, data guru, and urban mobility game changer Thibaut from Vianova. Thank you so much, Thibaut, for being with us. So for this
Thank you for having me.
we would like to start this conversation with you from the very beginning. So we are curious to understand where your idea actually came from. You know, normally when the founders think about startups, they are trying to satisfy a need or try to find a solution to some problem. So what was your case? How it came to your mind?
Yeah, as I said, thanks for having me. And I think you're pitching the company very well, probably better than I do. It's good that the podcast is recorded. Try to retrain on the same podcast, make it easy to understand what we do. Yeah, I have to say that, it didn't actually come automatically. Didn't have a bright idea about, hey, this is the way that we're going to solve, transportation, like using, connected vehicle data and traffic data. It didn't come automatically like that. It was more of a process. Steve Jobs was saying, like, you look back and you connect the dots. And for me, it was very much like that. So looking back, then I look at the journey and everything makes sense. But looking ahead at the time, nothing was actually really clear. The vision became clearer and clearer about the company and what we're doing. In a nutshell, I started actually in the finance world. I'm an engineer by training. I worked financial engineering, so banking. So I was a trader actually in London, and moved to Switzerland, where I worked for a hedge fund that was actually focused on renewable energy, sort of sustainable energy as we call it now. And then from there, like, I started a company already back in London, and I was, it sort of came in me that I wanted to go back in the entrepreneurship world, as I was very close to the renewable energy teams. I wanted to start in this domain. So I started the first company doing charging infrastructure, 2016, 2017. So that was the first EV on the road, and so the sort of the need for charging electric vehicles became very apparent, etc. And sort of I started that first company, which was very hard. And so I can discuss that, but we had some success, we had failure, more failure than success actually. And so I actually pivoted with my co-founder at the time, which is still my co-founder, another Thibaut, into Vianova. A little bit, by chance, we were looking to stay in the mobility sector. We liked it. We saw like a big revolution in terms of how people move and how goods move around city. And we said, look, like, we were very like hardware focused. No, let's just do software. Let's not do hardware anymore. Back in 2000, end of 2018, 2019, when we started Vianova, it was the rise of e-scooters in cities. We started with the first project actually with the Paris city about doing parking hub for e-scooters. And so we hacked the API of micromobility operators. We started getting the data, and then we provided that first insights to the city of Paris about how they should actually manage e-scooters that were all over the place at the time. And so that's how I got into the game.
Okay. And Thibaut, why Paris? Why did you decide to start from there?
Why Paris? So we actually, until recently, I was based in Zurich until 2 years ago, and my co-founders were actually based here. It was easier, and I think in Paris at the time, under the current presidency, but there was a big rise of interest in the startup scene. So there was a lot of tech founders, and there was there's still a big ecosystem here. And mobility and transportation historically, it's very large in France because you have the big actors like Transdev, Keolis, RATP, etc. So it seemed to be the right ecosystem to start the company.
And Thibaut, so back to your banking days. So you were in London. How did you actually decide? When did you decide to quit your job in a bank, HSBC, right? So it's a well-known bank. And why did you decided to switch into entrepreneurship? And why did you pick mobility, which is like very specific and specialized industry in that sense,
Yeah.
and very far from banking?
Yeah, no, of course. I mean, when I started, I was, I'd say I'm more of an engineer than a finance guy. And I came into finance just because I wanted to make money very quickly, you know, and so that for me, that was the easiest to actually make it happen.
Yeah, fair enough.
And, you know, I love mathematics. I was like, you know, this is going to be good actually to work with one of these large investment banks. You know? So that's how I got into it. And then, you know, sort of the hierarchy and, you know, almost, you know, 5, 6 years actually, you know, in front of like 3 or 4 screens, was not the sort of the future that I wanted to have for myself. And I was, felt like, you know, I wanted to have an environment that was more creative and more social, but also had a larger impact. And, I said, you know, well, why cannot I mix my sort of data engineering background with a bigger impact and sustainability was clearly like a big focus of mine. You know, how do we make, you know, the planet greener, and how do we, you know, energy and transportation was these two good angles to start. And so I started with energy, with charging infrastructure, and then I moved into transportation and smart city with the second company.
And this is when you created Vugo, is it the pronunciation of the
Yeah, that
first
was
company?
actually that was actually the first company I created in London, but that was completely different. That was a dating website. That was a dating app. You know,
Really?
it was
Okay.
yeah,
Wow.
it was very different. It was a dating app. Google, who you go. Everything was actually based on activity that you wanted to do. So you would match actually with people. So people would actually put post-its on a, you know, it was kind of like a play or like you know, postcard, you know, where you put post-it and then you say, I want to, you know, I want to go to the museum, I want to go play football, etc. I want to go and, you know, do certain things, you know, and then people actually match with you based on the activity and also based obviously on your profile. So that was to
For how
break
long
the
did you work with it on
digital
that?
to physical world. We ran, so I was doing that while I was actually still working in finance, for a year and a half.
Mm-hmm. Nice.
Yeah. And I think we
And
went to about 5,000 users at some point, so it was quite good. Yeah.
and what happened after?
Yeah. So I was one of the founder, but I was not the main one.
Okay.
It was the set of founders were actually good because there was a lot of people working in the nightlife industry in London. So we had a lot of, you know, the difficulties with this kind of app is the network effect at the beginning. So you need to have a minimum number of users that actually, you know, be there to create the content. And you see like dating app is also about content, you know, which kind of people
Yeah.
are there, etc., etc. And so because we had so many people actually in the nightlife industry, we certainly have actually a lot of traction on it. However, we didn't really have, let's say, like a product good enough. There was bugs, etc. So we missed actually that sort of background having a real software team.
Mm.
And so a lot of things actually were being outsourced. And that was the last time in my life that I actually decided to outsource any sort of
Okay.
development or
Okay.
any engineering.
So and then you actually decided to found Spark Horizon. Then you said with the one of the co-founders that is still
Yeah.
working
So
with the
then,
Vianova right now.
exactly. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, then I actually moved into this investment fund in Switzerland. And then after my 2 years there, I created Spark Horizon.
And how did you find your co-founder? Do you already know him before?
My first co-founder, we met actually while I was pitching at the company. So he was a friend of a friend. We were at this event called Vivatech in Paris, which was, you know, this big startup event. And so he was working at Google at the time. And so we, you know, I was there and I was obviously trying to make as much noise as I could with the company. And so he heard the noise and he was like, hey, that sounds pretty cool. maybe let's jump on this adventure. And so since then, we had let's say our high and lows, but overall, I think it's a good, yeah, it's a good, we're very complementary. So we also had, a CTO, Fred, that joined us also in Vianova at the beginning of the adventure.
And so you said basically this initial startup that you founded with another Thibault, you said, right?
Yes. Yeah.
So you were the two Thibaults, let's say, founding a startup that was based on renewables, right? Or charging the vehicles, right?
Charging, yeah, exactly. Charging infrastructure. So that's actually the charging stations that people use for electric cars. We had a different business model. We were actually advertising billboards, so we had digital billboards actually on the charging infrastructure, and so we could actually pay back the charging infrastructure within less than a year. Because we had all this, great advertising on it, and the goal was breaking this chicken and egg problem that you have between, do you roll out first the electric vehicle or the charging infrastructure? But the charging infrastructure, and no one can use it, so it's unprofitable. But if you don't have pro charging infrastructure, you don't have electric vehicle. And so we sort of, how do we innovate on the business model side to try to sort of roll out this network and steer the adoption of electric cars.
Okay, and then at some point you decided to pivot, or you kind of integrated. So how you actually arrived to Vianova?
Yeah, we actually started from scratch, to be honest. We started from scratch, like the charging infrastructure that we had, we sold them to a real estate company in Switzerland because most of the stations were there. And then we started from scratch,
Okay, and can you just like basically explain to us some information regarding how actually the platform collects and processes all the data from connected vehicles? Like I imagine that you do it to improve like the urban transportation system, right? So what actually you
Yes.
do, how do you collect data, how do you process it?
Yeah. Yes, so there's just a couple of things in terms of the large trends that we have. You may see the trend number one is that mobility is changing very rapidly, like the way people move and the way goods move is changing very quickly. Like the rise of e-commerce, basically the number of packages that people deliver that was kick off during COVID, the micro mobility rise, autonomous vehicle, etc. You have that, so the mobility landscape is becoming more and more complex now. On the other side, the connectivity is also increasing a lot. Obviously, we are all carrying a mobile phone, which issue a lot of GPS information about where we localize, etc., etc. And the vehicles also, in Europe now, 100% of the vehicles sold are connected. So those ones also have a lot of data that you can utilize and that have a wealth of information for planning as well as real-time management. So traffic management, prediction of congestion, etc., etc. So we actually partner up with a lot of different data sources. The could be Volkswagen, it could be Renault, it could be Nissan, it could be Mercedes, etc., etc. And so we capture this information, and then we basically provide intelligence on either real-time information about traffic insights, speed, traffic, etc., or basically planning information. For instance, number of like sort of the truck volume in certain areas where it could be anything from planning that we do a lot, actually planning loading zones in cities, where are the areas where you want to plan actually the new loading zones in the city that actually fits with the last mile delivery that you have currently. Where do you get alerts? Basically, we're working with a port authority in the US where they get alerts every time there is a congestions issue for people actually to be aware that there's a congestions, and so for the crews to wait for the passengers when there's congestions actually on the bridge that brings them to
Wow,
the.
that's amazing.
So then then we would connect also to third parties and provide information also to the road users themselves.
Okay. And did you find some like initial obstacles that you remember that you faced at the beginning? Because I imagine to access all this data and all this information, you need to get in touch with companies like you were mentioning Volkswagen or Renault or something else, but also like, I don't know, probably something provided by the government. I don't even know.
Yeah, and also,
Right.
Thibaut, you basically are building for cities, which means that you're selling to government. So be honest, how painful was that at the beginning?
It's very painful.
I can imagine. I can imagine, to be honest.
It's very painful. I also think in some ways that, if you want to change, if you, like, how many like marketplace and e-commerce and accounting software do we want? I mean, at some point we're going to have to focus on the hard things. So yeah, I wanted to focus on the hard things, so maybe the way to, scale the company and make money is probably going to be harder, but at least it's going to have a bigger impact. So clearly it's not the easiest path, but it's very rewarding because you feel like you're making a change. And also it's such a moving industry and such a moving market that,
Yeah.
you learn a lot. And I think that's really cool.
And how did you get your first city on board? How did you get to convince them?
So we do a lot of what we call like pilot partnerships. So, we
Mm-hmm.
do like, this sort of 3 month pilot when they can test basically the platform free of charge.
Mm-hmm.
And so that helped us actually like building the first traction and the first, actually it helps also to reduce the sales cycle because people can actually test the product, see the value directly, and then you already have a step into it. So you have a step with procurement because they already signed like a first pilot, and then you can, once you do the pilot, you can work with the procurement in terms of creating, a bigger contract afterwards. So we use this a lot. So that was for the first city, and then the scaling, clearly like we became better and better at who we sell to. So selling to cities, it's hard, but once you know it, it's also a moat. So it's also a competitive advantage. It's also a barrier to entry for other companies. And so yes, the tender side, actually we became, much better, and we also partnering with bigger companies to enable us to reach larger contracts.
Yeah. So if I understand correctly, Vianova, it sits in a kind of a tricky spot between tech and the public policy. So what's the weirdest thing that you had to learn on the fly, like for example, regulations or parking policy, for example? I don't know, that comes into my mind.
Yeah, so you're right. I mean, it's exactly. So it's the obstacles, and not only a tech obstacle, is also, we obviously very linked to policy and politics, right? So
Yeah.
depending on the priority of the elected officials, things can change. Priorities can change, and but overall, I think we have, large trend that are actually pushing us, and generally, it's, most of the mayors do have actually a very lots of actually strong policies on, how to make cities greener, like how to develop actually active mobility, how to cut congestions, how to reduce pollution, etc. And so for us, we see that it's everywhere in Europe, at least in the US to some extent. So that actually, push the need for such insights that we provide actually to make cities more efficient.
And in which cities exactly Vianova is present so far? So I was reading there are a couple of cities.
Yeah, where actually, where you both, where do you live?
I'm in Geneva.
Okay, so Geneva
So
is not a client actually. Zurich and Basel are clients in Switzerland.
no traffic in Geneva.
And yourself, Erica?
I am in Barcelona. I'm in Spain. I don't think you guys are in
Yeah,
Spain yet.
no, in Spain, it's been, let's say, a tough market for us, but
Why? Why
yeah,
is that?
just because the procurement side is very difficult actually in Spain. So public procurement is very difficult. It's really not yeah,
What is the
it's
main
not something.
difficulty? Tell us more. Like getting contact with the government or
Yeah, getting contacts. Generally, like the process is so painful that even the city themselves actually can't really do it to procure externally. So lots of bureaucracy around it. So yeah, it hasn't been successful for us. France,
yeah,
Benelux, the UK, the
Amsterdam?
Nordics, it's been good. Germany has been good as well. So that's our main market.
Yeah, I guess the one like a hard one will be Italy as well, because Italy honestly sucks in terms of like government bureaucracy. So
We
Yes,
work
gonna
with
be a
the
actually.
tough.
city of we work with the city of Torino, and it's actually it's a great customer. Actually, we're working very well with them. We
Oh,
used to work with Milano.
good.
We actually found some good eco. What we see, to be fair, it's also like as you know, for startups, there's also a question of focus. And there's a question of focus in terms of product, but there's also a question of focus in terms of geographies and markets. And so there's certain markets that you probably want to work with distributors or integrators that can actually do the sales part for you, you know, and one of the key actually for startups is to develop this channel sales. So finding
Mhm.
integrators, etc., that actually can push the product for you, that find sense for them to push the product and to integrate that into their own offering. And that's what we try to do in South Europe, but also in the Middle East, for instance.
Wow. And Thibaut, which one of those cities was the hardest, and why did you? Can you think of just one specifically?
You mean hardest to get as a
One
client?
where you had something that went wrong, for example. Yes, to get one of those cities as a client, if
I don't
any.
have one in mind yet.
Maybe you
No,
don't
I
have one.
don't have. I actually
Well,
don't have one in
it's
mind.
great. Okay, what was the easiest then?
I
Which was the
feel
easiest?
like generally, like in the Dutch cities, I feel fairly good to work with, as well as the Nordic cities.
Because they're
And
primate,
to,
like
to
more
some extent,
structured.
some of the French cities, just because they have more staff, they just have more staff, you know, and so the fact that they have more staff, they can actually focus on more tech projects and more like sort of tech enablement project that actually can make the city better using technology. And also the procurement is easier. So the public procurement is easier in the Netherlands, in the Nordics, and in France and in the rest of Europe.
And is there a way for you to select the next city? For example, if you have to think of the next city you want to work with, let's say, is there any criteria that you have to respect? Or, for example, in terms of feasibility, you know already that, I don't know, on the governmental levels, it's easier, or, for example, there are other aspects that you normally consider.
So to be fair, I mean the market is not that big. I mean it's about 500 cities that we could actually talk to in Western Europe. So it's not but we generally like go from our core markets where we're already very successful, and sometimes we already have contracts to try to sell other things. You know, for instance, we already have a lot of contracts to manage micromobility, as I was saying at the beginning. So dashboards where we can manage, parking of e-scooters and setting up regulations for the scooters, controlling whether, the scooters are parked in the right place, understanding the trips, the vehicles, and so having a reporting of the micromobility in the city. So once we have this type of contract, then we're like, okay, we know the city very well. Maybe we can sell traffic insights so that they can understand in real time, basically congestions or do traffic planning. And then if we have that, then maybe we can also sell safety analytics so that we can map near misses in the city. What are the intersections where they have to prioritize interventions, because we see a lot of near misses with cyclists. So we try also to expand a lot the account like that because it's just also easier.
Okay. And do you think Vianova actually contributes to reducing carbon emissions in urban areas? Like, did you notice some measurable impacts? You observed something like similar?
A good question. I don't have the CO2 numbers in my head. We actually calculate that because we calculate that with a lot of clients, but I haven't prepared the CO2 number in my head. But we're more of an enabler. So in a way that what we do is that we optimize mobility. So we're making mobility more efficient. And so
Mhm.
everything is linked. Like cutting congestion, understanding traffic flows, diverting traffic flows, building the right infrastructure for the right traffic flow, and making sure that cities are safe, so that people actually can go on scooters or bikes instead of taking their car. So all of that basically contribute to having a more, sustainable mobility approach. Yeah.
So we spoke a lot about the company, how you founded it, how you found the idea, how you found the co-founder. But I wanted to understand actually about something about your personality. So if you think about yourself, for example, when you were a kid, like you were 5 or 7 years old, probably playing already with the cars, creating already some traffic, you were dreaming about something completely different. Maybe, I don't know, you were playing with, I don't know, rocket or something completely different. So you feel like you are realizing now your dream that you had since you were a child, or something changed during the years, during your growth, let's say university and school and so on.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if I was. I mean, I think I was probably playing with, toy kids, the kids toy basically when I was younger, like cars and so on. But I don't think it was specifically a passion more than any other kid, But I think I was always very curious, and so my parents also pushed us to be very curious. I have a twin brother, by the way, that is also an entrepreneur.
Amazing.
Both of my parents have their own company, so I guess it's friends in the family, and so I think it was more this search for freedom, and sort of as an entrepreneur, you have freedom, you have a lot of responsibility, but you have a lot of freedom. So for me, it was always something that I wanted to. It's part of my. I have this approach of like having some life concepts, so having a framework basically to approach life, and so for me, freedom is a very important one. Freedom to free enterprise, but also freedom in terms of mobility, being able to move and be able to, that's why I always traveled a lot in my life, etc. And so that's very important. The last one, I always thought, and sometimes I see it also with my twin brother, but I always thought that most of the entrepreneurs have that feeling of incompleteness. They never complete, and so that's what actually pushed them to go and go and go and go and never give up, and sort of try to prove something. They always have like this search to prove something to the world or to someone. And, that's, I think, part of my personality that, to some extent, it can sound sad, but actually it's not. I think that's also what push ambition, but to feel incomplete in some ways, and so you're always searching for that thing that actually will complete you, and maybe you'll never find it. Yeah.
And who started the entrepreneurial career between you and your brother? Was it you? Was it him? Was
It's
it
kind
like
of
maybe
like
at the same time?
it actually happened around the same time. So my brother was actually working for Rocket Internet, which is like this big German, it used to be a big German incubator of startups. When I started actually with dating app in the UK, so almost at the same time. It's actually based in Southeast Asia now. It could be a good next interviewee.
Yeah, I would love that. That's pretty cool, honestly. And so you first started with your dating app. It was more like a side hustle, if I understand correctly. You kept working, right? So when you actually decided to go all in into your entrepreneurial journey, how was it for you? Were you scared? Were you complete 100% sure of what you were doing? What were your biggest, I don't know, fears or doubts about the whole jump that you made?
Yeah, so you have when you do that jump, like you have some bad habits that you basically you are into this hamster wheel, and you think that you sometimes you think that hard work is the only thing that counts. So I was, working day and night and working day and night, etc., to launch the first company, but I was not working smart. We didn't do the right market research before. We went all in basically. I also didn't take any time off between my last job and this one. And if I would do it again, if I would recommend advice actually founders is really to take I'm gonna say that take time because you still need to have that sense of urgency in terms of executing things, but not uh, to really
Overstress
go,
yourself.
not to go to overstress yourself, and especially it's not just about hard work; it's also about smart work and doing things the right way and validating hypotheses as you go. And so validated hypotheses as you go and within your startup journey is very important, and it's like sometimes it's just better to give up after 6 months if you see that you haven't validated certain assumptions instead of like going super hardcore and pushing it and pushing it. Might as well just, stop and do something else if you haven't validated your assumptions.
I actually started reading, me and Vlada, we both started reading this book that it's the Lean Startup. And I am currently reading the chapter about validating, how important it is to validate as soon as you can, as soon as it's possible, even if the product is not ready enough, even if you are not ready enough, just start and, like try to verify every step of the way, try to get feedback as much as you can from users. For example, even though the product is not there yet, yeah, that's the most important way to understand if you're getting it right and to change your value position, if you have to in time.
Yeah, that's why I think there's a fine line, I think, for entrepreneurs between being perseverant and being stubborn. You need to have some perseverance, but you need to be aware. And so not being, stubborn in terms of not hearing the feedback from the market or not hearing the feedback from your employees.
And that seems easy, it seems easy, but it's not, because you have to be perseverant because you're building something that it never existed before, right? So you're innovating, you're doing something new, you need to be stubborn, let's say, but then you also have to switch and to change when you actually understand that that's not the right way that you are pursuing. It's kind of tricky. It can be tricky.
Yeah. That's why I always recommend founders to take some time off. It's very important, and that was one of the big mistakes I did actually when I started. I didn't take any time off. I didn't take any vacation for the first 4 or 5 years. So, and I realized that, that actually not actually having this time off is an issue to have that bird eye view and sort of look back at how things. You also have a lot of new ideas actually when you take this time. So, for the last, for the last 3 or 4 years, I was really diligent in terms of taking some time to sometimes I actually call that growth week because that you get together with friends, etc. You do an activity that you like together, taking some time out, having this growth mindset in terms of how do you can improve your personal life, how you can improve your professional life, but really taking the time to have that bird eye view that you don't get when you're an entrepreneur because you're so into the day to day operations.
Into everything.
It's tricky.
No, it's a great advice actually, taking some time off not only to decompress, but also to get things from a bigger perspective, to look at the big picture of what is going on. And when you're inside of it, just head down, you just don't have the time and the energy to look at things from another perspective. That's a very good advice actually. Right. And Thibaut, let's talk money a little bit. So how did you raise your first round? How did you find your first investors back then?
We actually raised our first round during COVID because we closed June 2020. It was really, out here. I was doing the fundraising while I was locked down at my parents' house. So that's what happened. So we actually raised from one Lithuanian English fund that's focused on sustainable energy or climate tech, as you would call it now, and another French corporate venture fund. So we raised 1.5 million, and then right after 9 months after, we actually increased the seed round with another 1 million from a Dutch fund. And then the last one was a Series A round that we raised in 2023.
And can you disclose how much did you raise in 2023?
It was 6 million we raised.
Okay. Well, congrats, first of all. And how did you find them? How did you find those investors? Did you already have them in your network? Did you use an incubator, accelerator?
I think you have to network a little bit, but I have to say that nowadays, for my first two companies that I had before, you really had to do the reach. Now it's the VC that actually do the reach. As an entrepreneur, focus on executing, making sure that you have a operationally strategy. The investors will come.
So you're saying that they are kind of already knew you from your previous experience, and that made a good impact on
not all of them, but now as an entrepreneur, you have a lot of inbounds from VCs. Actually, every week you're getting contacted by VCs. That's what they do. They do pipeline generation.
Well, I will say maybe it's because maybe you perceive that as easier, maybe it's not easier for everyone just because you also had like experiences before. So that it's a very good
Hmm.
sign for VCs, for angel investors. But maybe at the beginning it's not as easy for example, first time entrepreneurs and first time founder that wants to build something new. It can be harder to build a network. So yeah,
I
but
think
it's
if
good.
you're building a great company, they will find you.
Yeah.
Your time, your founder's time, it's not worse. You have nothing to do in like this bullshit events stuff that is organized that way. Your time is to
Yeah.
choose a company. They will find you.
And
And the less
when
amount of time you're in this event, the more they're gonna actually want to find you. The
yeah.
more they actually, because they will be seen. I mean, no, like, it's like, all the investors, use like this fairly sophisticated, basically software where, they see the signals basically from all the new startups coming through, whether it's LinkedIn, website, announcements, etc. So, if you're doing well, you will pop up actually on the radar.
Okay, interesting. It's a good message, anyways, to the audience. It's reassuring that if you're building something new, you have to be focused more on the technical side. And how did you find your CTO? You said that the CTO actually joined the team later on. Did you already, because CTO is such an important part of what you're building, right? Of the company, the technological part is the heart. So how did you
Yes.
go with that?
To be honest, we just put an ad out there, and then we interview some people.
On
We just
LinkedIn.
said like we will exactly. Was that on LinkedIn, or I think it was. I don't know if it was on Angel List or one of these. I don't remember
Okay.
exactly,
Okay.
but
And
it was one of the startup job ads. And we said like, okay, we're looking for CTO. We closing out our seed round. Anyone interested? Basically, like let's meet face to face. Yeah.
Very cool.
and were you looking at some specific skills when you were choosing the right person?
So we had a couple of couple of points. And the first one is that they need to be like a good like sort of human interaction because with founders, you go through a hell of a journey, so you need to make sure that things can flow communication wise, in the higher and the lows. And number two, like a strong like software background. You see like someone that has built software already and that know how to productionize software, that know how to go through the whole software, and that's someone that have a data background. And so our situation was coming from Renault Nissan and was actually in charge of the connected vehicle data platform. So that
What
was
are the
very yeah.
what are the strategies to assess like the skills of the CTO? Because, for example, I don't have any technical background whatsoever, right? I have more of a sales background. So in my case, for a person that doesn't have a technical background, do you have any suggestions, any ideas of how to assess the skills of a potential CTO? Or did you ask for help?
No, I mean I'm an engineer, but I'm myself,
Yeah,
and I used to code as well, etc. So
yeah.
obviously it was easier for me. But to be fair, like asking for references is a good way. When you have this conversation, I mean, if you are not technical at all, I would probably, first ask for references and second bring someone technical that can actually do the interview with you. Probably
Because
a good
that's
idea.
really hard, I feel like. That's the
Because
hardest.
once you sign the paper to integrate someone, it's very, very, very annoying to disintegrate someone from a
Yeah,
company. So you want to
especially in
make sure
Europe
that you
with,
Yeah, yeah. And I mean,
yeah.
in general, because, as long as the person has shares, etc., it's a really a nightmare to split parts. So you want to make sure that you make the good choices.
Of course, 100%. It's a huge risk, and as I said, like, it's probably one of the most important people in the company. So maybe a good way to put it will be like put in the kind of like a limit in the contract or like a 1 year trial period where you can actually decide whether it's a good fit or not. But it's tough. It's really, really tough.
Yeah, but it's also difficult because the person either at the beginning will not be paid, or actually is gonna have a huge salary cut. So if you say like it's a 1 year trial and the guy's gonna like,
It's a
but
very
why would
long.
I go for it then? If I'm not getting any equity,
True.
so you need to have something that is quite appealing, to be honest. Otherwise, it's gonna be difficult also to track.
Very true. Very true.
Yeah.
Well,
It's better
Thibaut,
to have a little bit of something big than a big part of something very small. If you see what I mean.
yeah, that's true.
So if you need to give shares away to make sure that you have the right team to do it. Yeah.
No, for sure, for sure. Because that's the way they actually, like, you can actually motivate someone. It's giving up kind of like the shares, right? Because as you said, the salary at the beginning, it's usually very low. So that it's more like a long-term dream that you're pursuing. It's hard. If you don't find the right person, then yeah, it can be really, really tricky for the company success. But Thibaut, we
Yes.
are getting to the end of the episode. So the final question that we always ask to all our guests is what gives you momentum? What gives you momentum to just get through the highs and the lows of the startup journey and keeps you motivated, let's say?
For me, I'm gonna call it growth and learning. So I feel like I'm getting a better person every day by, both in terms of pure like knowledge that I'm getting, but also in terms of, working with a great team and doing all these great interactions, etc. And that's probably what creates momentum for me.
So let's say it's both like on personal level and technical level, right?
Yeah, exactly. I think it's a rewarding job in this way, to be able to bring a team together, because it's a human adventure. That's I think what is very, very, very positive, and you go through the hardship together. Second, I think it's very challenging intellectually, growth wise and learning wise. It's a very interesting job. Not a single day that are the same. Every day is different.
Yeah, of course. And it was very interesting for us to have you. So thank you so
Okay.
much. We learned a lot. Thank you for your time, for explaining your experience and walking us a little bit through ups and downs of an entrepreneurial path because it's not always easy, right? You build one startup, then you build another one, then you sell one, you close another one. So we understand it's not an easy journey, but yeah, a lot of compliments for you for your courage because it takes courage to leave a
Thank you.
corporate world and to step into the
And we
thank
are
you.
sure we will hear a lot of positive things about Vianova. So we wish you the best of luck and we hope to stay in touch with you. So maybe you can come and tell us more about your journey in the future again.
Yeah, thank you for the interview. I really appreciate it. Thank you, Rika.
Thank you.
Thank you for that. Goodbye.
Thank you,
Bye.
Fido.
Have a nice
Thank
day.
you. Bye bye.